Microphone would help that. Morning. Welcome to a special meeting of the Holiday Island Board of Commissioners. Today is Monday, November 13th. Excuse me. This is a business meeting of the board held in public. The board is committed to disclosure of the business activities of the district to the public, as well as the public's ability to comment at public meetings. On behalf of the Holiday Island Board of Commissioners, I call this meeting to order. I want to remind all in attendance that the Board of Commissioners acts as a governing body, whereas the district manager is responsible for the day-to-day operations of the district. The purpose of the board, as elected representatives of the property owners, is to provide direction to the district manager and assure the financial solvency of the district. It is not the responsibility of the commissioners to become involved in the daily operations of the district. Let us stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Commissioner Stamps, will you please call the roll?
I will. Commissioner Dyer. Commissioner Tiller.
Here.
Commissioner Brown.
Here.
Commissioner Surratt.
Here.
And I'm here in body only.
Oh, come on. With all commissioners present, I declare a quorum. Commissioners. Thank you. You have had an opportunity to review the emailed agenda. I would like to amend the agenda to switch the order of the new business actions. First, let's address the establishment of the 2024 assessment. Then we will take up the 2024 budget. Do I have a motion to amend and approve the agenda?
So. Second.
It has been moved and seconded to accept and amend the agenda. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is carried. The October 30, 23 regular meeting minutes have not yet been published. We will table this item until the November 27 meeting. Ceremonial, did anyone have anything? Announcements?
Ma'am,
Yes.
the walls are going up on the sports complex.
Woo!
We got sticks in the air.
We will now move to hear our general public comments. It is a 3-minute time limit. And Mr. Penguin has some comments he would like to make.
Yes, this concerns the road right-of-way. I was notified yesterday that somebody called my wife and told her that the signs I put up, if they were on the road right-of-way, they'd be picked up this morning and threw away. I want to know what is the right-of-way. I measured the road in front of my house at 15 feet. I measured the road at, by number 18 Green. It's 18 feet. I measured the road at Holiday Island Drive at the crosswalk by the golf course, and it's 22 feet. I measured the road at the stop sign, just past the stop sign on Country Club Drive, and that's 25 feet. So who determines where the right way of the road is to pick up somebody's sign and throw it away? If they do, if they throw the signs away and they're on private property, I didn't want to break the law, and in our community before, we had an ordinance that we could put temporary signs for 30 days. They had to be dated. If they were over 30 days, you couldn't have any permanent signs, but if for 30 days, you could put like a for sale sign out, but they would be taken away at 30 days if you didn't move. Now, I guess my question is, who goes around and looks at that, and do those people know what the width of every road is and the right of way? I don't want to put it on, if I'm going to put it on somebody's property, I want to put it as close to the road as possible. But I certainly am not going to break the law if that's the law, or if that's in your ordinance. So I guess my question is that, if you take my signs away, somebody took some signs down that I had, and right beside them is, and we were only 4.5 feet from the road. There's 2 other signs right beside it. There was an empty lot, and somebody took my signs and they were gone. And you know, $13 a piece, I don't appreciate that. So I need some clarification, if I got permission to put that sign on somebody's property, that I don't put it on the river or the right of way of the road. So please let me, I want to meet with you, and you show me the map so I can figure out where the right of way ends. I don't want to put it on the city property or the district's property. And I don't know if you have an ordinance for a temporary sign, but if you're gonna enforce those regulations, then you need to enforce it on all the signs, because coming down Holiday Island Drive, there's a lot of them that are like 2 or 3 feet from the road, right by the road, so you can't choose and pick, otherwise I think you're opening yourself up for a lot of litigation. So, that's all I've got to say.
Danny will speak.
Okay.
Right now.
Sir, I don't know who called your wife. It wasn't me. This is the first I've heard of any issues with any signs.
I've never had a problem.
Well, Al Salacher called my wife and told her they would pick up the signs
Okay.
and throw them away this morning.
Well, like I said, first I've heard of any issues at all about any signs, but
Well, I went last night when it was dark and picked them all up.
I will get you the information that you need.
Okay,
and
thank you.
We'll go back and take a look at our regulations.
Thank you.
Sure.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Bingley. I will say, I put signs out 2 years in a row and never had an issue. And always, like where the one in my yard is now, it's always been acceptable. So I don't know what the issue is.
Well, there was 4 of them that were gone.
Yeah.
They were
That's
just-
what I've been wondering where mine was.
They left the country.
The road right-of-ways run to the lot lines, and the lot pins. If you see an electric pole, those electric poles are sitting on the lot line. They should be on the lot
That's the
line.
way that's what I thought.
And that's, other than that, anything other than that is on
Okay, thank you.
the right of way.
Anyone else, I didn't see, Linda, did you have anything, you want to address anything? Oh, you did.
In the past years that I've had a sign, and it was too close to the blacktop, and they just said, "Again, can you move?" It's fine. No one's ever picked them up or thrown them away because maybe that's all we have. But they should, property owner or any of our staff.
Thank you.
Yes. Next, we will have a report from the district manager.
Okay, sure.
The floor is yours, Mr. Franklin.
Thank you, ma'am. And as we were going into this budget process and looking at the CIP and all of the expenses that we're facing, I think all of us kind of wanted to have a look back at kind of the history of our budgets and where we've been year to year. Operating a suburban improvement district, just like operating a city, those expenses have a certain trajectory over, 10, 20, 30 years, and it generally follows the consumer price index, because those expenses, they just grow every year, just like our economy grows. And then we try to adjust wages with the COLA to keep pace with consumer price index. And so, just to kind of give us a feel for the big picture, where we're at overall. So can you pull up that first slide, Sherry?
This one?
No, in that slide deck that had 9 pages. It was a PDF, 9 pages long. You have that? Well,
I don't know.
it's this one, and they're numbered.
Historical budget comparison, like I said.
I know the commissioners have that. I thought for the benefit of the audience, you might want to see this as we're
Do you-
discussing it.
Do you have it on your shared drive?
It's on my desktop, but it's what I emailed you. We looked at it Thursday.
I don't have email on this computer.
Okay. All right.
I can go email it to you. I can go copy it real quick
Well, that's
to
okay.
my,
That's okay. I know the commissioners have this in front of
Mr.
you.
Presley, I think it would be good if the
Okay.
audience was, let's wait and let Sherry go send it. So
All right, let's
I'll
do
go
that.
send it.
About this assessment and, I think this is, look at it. But when I worked in the city, and to prolong the life of HICID. And, so I know Danny's done some work on this and it looks good. How, much shorter the life of HICID would be.
That's on a separate chart. And, we're gonna discuss, we will discuss AOB during the regular order of business. We'll talk about that. That is a little bit of timing.
So,
This is what Danny.
I ran those
He
calculations.
has that page too, so we do,
yeah, that,
okay.
Are you prepared to address the chat you had with the attorneys? Do you want to talk about
Sure.
that yet?
Sure.
Why don't you talk about that, because that's been,
I'd be happy to. I know how critical that is, that we have a good partnership with the city and that we find creative ways to share projects when we can, but there's limits to that. I mean, we can't, in most cases, we can't give the city money, or the city may not be able to give us money because they're getting turnback funds. Those are state taxpayer funds. And in the eyes of the court, these roads are privately owned by Holiday Island Suburban Improvement District. And you can't take public tax money and apply that to privately owned roads. And so we're kind of in a legal quandary there. So Mayor Keys and I have been working really closely together. And I'm thankful for the partnership that we have and the working relationship that we have. So we had a meeting Thursday morning in Springdale with our attorney and with the city's attorney to try to figure out some way to use those turnback funds to supplement our roads department. Both for wages, for trucks, for coal patch, for equipment, for, any number of ways that we could use those turnback funds, including a road project where we overlay and do a chip and seal or asphalt or something to repair a roadway. I know that everyone in the community is familiar with some of the areas like Danube and Hickory and that area where the roads are really bad because of the water lines under the road, and it's been dug up so many times to make those repairs on the water lines. Now we're dealing with the fallout from that. So the short of it is the attorneys are researching AG opinions and laws, and I'm going to work with some other attorneys at the Arkansas Municipal League and maybe Arkansas DOT attorneys to figure out how to make this work. They have a strategy, and it would include possibly like us leasing the right-of-way to the city for a number of years. And then there would be, after so many years or decades, there would be a reverter clause in there. I don't know all the legalese, how it's gonna play out. In fact, the attorneys don't quite know yet either. But that's our strategy. I know that the city's got several $100,000 of road money. And they want to use it for the good of this community, and we all want that. We've just got to figure out how to get around these legal hurdles. The Arkansas state laws as it applies to suburban improvement districts are very, they're convoluted, and they're not well written, and it leaves a lot to the imagination. It's just things that they didn't foresee with suburban improvement districts. And so there's a lot of holes in the law. And that not only with roads, but a lot of other aspects of suburban improvement districts. I should know more in a month or two. But I'm confident because the attorneys are on the same page on this. It's not an adversarial thing whatsoever. They're working together to make this work for the good of our community, so I'm optimistic about it.
If
And also in terms of coming up with a change in the law or some professional dispensation for us.
I don't believe so.
when each unit was plotted, and it was, all the roads and stuff were made public roads. That's on the original plat map that's going into the county. Now, in the early days, Judge Arthur Carter said, I'll tell you one thing right now, you guys can do whatever you want to about building Holiday Island, but the county will not take the roads. And so, for big private roads, they're not, because the school bus couldn't run on them, the postal department couldn't run on private roads. They're actually dedicated to the public. So, I don't understand
Well,
where
and
we're going with that.
we had this conversation Thursday morning with the mayor and the attorneys. There's a legal distinction between ownership of the ground and right-of-way. They could be privately owned, but it's a public right-of-way. I mean, the public has the right to access those roads. We even talked about, in some communities, they're gated because they're private roads. But at some point, if those gates are not put up to maintain that privacy and private aspect of the roads, then it reverts to public right-of-way or public access. And there are some communities in the country that once a year, they put their gates up just to reestablish the fact that these are private roads. So you're splitting hairs there between ownership and public right-of-ways. And I think the courts even have contrary court of.
Thank you, Danny. I didn't catch a flat footed. You did well.
It's not easy.
Let's move on here.
All right. So thank you for doing that, Sherry. And you can
You're
see up here, this is just to give you some idea of what the budget looked like during this 8-year period from 2001 to 2008. If you look at the percentages there of growth in the budget, it averaged about 3.3% over that 8 years. If you go back, and I went back and looked at consumer price index in the United States for these same years. It was like 2.8 2.7, I believe, or 2.8. So it just costs to do business. And so, 2001, that was 22 years ago. And if you follow this same trend, you can see how that budget goes from 3.37 million in 2009 to 5.1 million in 2022. So that just gives you an idea of kind of the trajectory of costs. And a lot of that is salaries, because our aim is to keep salaries on pace with the market. And, we have a workforce here of about 30 to 35 full-time employees and about 30 part-time employees. And so that's, it's a big part of our budget, obviously.
Danny, do you mind reviewing the last 3 columns for everybody so that they can see that net profit and loss?
Yes. This is, because we're a suburban improvement district, the accounting is done as an enterprise fund accounting. And the profit and loss calculations include depreciation on all the assets in Holiday Island. So all of the buildings, all the marina, all the vehicles, all of this building that we're in here. Well, this depreciation is kind of running in the background every year. And it's about $1.1 to $1.3 million of depreciated assets that goes on the books against us, if you will, every year. The auditors make those calculations. And I've seen that done for years and years. It's not an exact science. I mean, how do you put a number on this building and how much depreciation this building is going to have every year? I mean, you could say, well, the life of this asset is 40 years and it's worth this much and it's going to depreciate incrementally over that 40-year life of the asset. But that's not an exact science. So when you're looking at that net profit and loss, you'll see in the parentheses there, those years when we had a loss. And I'm just letting you know that depreciation is calculated in there and causing that loss every year.
But even looking at depreciation, I mean, basically, expenses plus capital improvements, which to me is a misnomer, it should be just major maintenance issues, equals the amount of income that we have. We don't make any profit.
That is correct. Yeah, it's, SIDs are not intended to make a profit. Golf courses are not intended to make a profit. But I think part of the challenge is, and has been for decades, the fact that if we're not reinvesting at another 1.1 million towards our assets, but we're losing 1.1 million in depreciation, eventually, if you don't reinvest enough, you get behind. And that's what has happened to Holiday Island. We had old fire trucks, old buildings, an old marina, just everything here is just aging over 20, 30, 40 years. And you get behind the curve if you're not reinvesting to overcome the depreciation of aging assets. So let's go to the next slide, please, Sherry. This is just a quick shot of the history of the assessments going back to 2015. So we've got here. It was $710 back then. And the blue line at the top, that's an improved property. And then the green line, lots. So the rate of increase for the AOB is not kept up with the rate of cost, consumer price index, wages, and everything else that we purchase here to operate Holiday Island. Go to the next one real quick. Now we know that The study that was done to establish the assessment was done in 2011. And they took the value of say a half-acre lot in Holiday Island that has the benefit of all of the amenities that are offered here. And then they took the value of a comparable lot that's, say, 10 miles outside of Holiday Island, elsewhere in Carroll County, and looked at the difference in those two values. And they crunched all the numbers on the improved lots versus unimproved and said, well, okay, that value, that increment there is $13,000. And so your assessment pays towards that $13,000 value every year. So it's a finite amount. So over time, for example, if you look on the third line there, R1 improved paved, after 23 years, you would have paid off your AOB. But just like amortizing on a car or a house or anything else, if you increase the amount of the payment, you'll pay it off sooner. Thus, you would, HICID would reach the end of its life. There would be no more assessments, and you couldn't fund the services that we provide in this. So if you added $30 to that, it would pay off in 20 years instead of 23. So this is just for example, just a scenario, so the board can kind of see what the implications of that would be if we increase the AOB. The second set of numbers on the bottom half of the page is just an example of a $50 increase. An improved lot would pay off in 20 years. So, question on that, it's just for example. Next slide, please. On page 4, this is just a look at our current, that's MMDA, that's money market demand account. That's basically like our mothership account where we pay everything. It's like our checking account, if you will. The major projects fund is the money that the board set aside for water projects last year when we sold the perpetual easement to the water tower, as well as we had surplus property sales. I believe we did 3, like an auction to get rid of some surplus property. We brought in about $260,000 to $280,000 on that. So that's our total cash on hand, $2.4 million. Now the total cash that HICID has is a little over $4 million. But that includes, investments, reserve funds for equipment reserves and other things, money that we can't touch per se. Any questions on that?
The reason I asked Danny and why we put this together is because we made a board decision to cash fund 2 projects. And this is where that money is going to come from. Reflected differently in the budget. It's too bad there's not a line on the budget that says transfer from money market deposit account, because that's basically what we're gonna do but this is where our funds are coming from.
And just a quick reminder to the board, Jeff Denhart with ESI Engineering will be here 2 weeks from today to give us an update on the design and all of that on the well number 5 project.
And would you ask him to give us kind of a timeline of how he thinks it would progress once the bid is awarded? Does he expect it's going to be 2 years to finish it, or is it going, and all of that obviously is up in the air, just looking at what we've had to do so far, like
Yes,
well number 4. But it would be helpful for our budgeting purposes to know what's going to fall possibly in 04, what 24 hundred could fall in 25.
I'm sure the 2 projects are well 5 is one.
Well, 5 and the sports complex.
No,
Oh,
well, 4. The rehab of well 4 and the sports complex were the ones we have already said we would cash fund. Well 5, to my knowledge, we haven't made a determination about how we're gonna fund that.
There's been no motion.
We have no estimate of how much it's gonna cost yet.
And how- But, water plant.
Same, waiting on a grant, hopefully.
And that was the last adjustment need, was the, UV, and have started the process to get that done, so
We're okay with the state, correct?
Yes.
So my impression was that the 968,000
For well number 5,
we were. That was my impression, so we'll have to talk about that and figure it out.
Jeff comes 2 weeks from today, and he says, okay, we're ready. Luckily, you get a bidder, we don't know. About $1 million, I think Dennis said last week, is coming from, we don't know where it's coming from.
Well, I believe it'll come right here from the money market demand
That
account.
was
We
my,
got the money there.
I thought that was our intention when we talked about cash funding. I thought when we spoke about what we were gonna cash fund, it was for well number.
I think you're right on that, but I don't think we ever really made a motion to.
No, because we were waiting for.
Yeah. Another thing I think would be interesting to hear from Jeff too, is if that well 5 project can be done in stages, doesn't impact our budget so dramatically. It may not be, I mean, maybe all or nothing, but it'd be worth asking.
Phyllis, you're exactly right. We had a conversation about, waiting, perpetually wait for the grant applications and that kind of thing. I'm sorry. Perpetually wait for these grant applications and it just stretches the timeline out. So several months ago, we did have a conversation here at the board table that let's go ahead and say, let's move forward with it. If we have to, we'll cash fund it. But we did not have a.
No, we didn't, but that was the reason that I wanted everybody to be able to see exactly what our cash funding. But we'll revisit this.
I'm sorry, Dan, did you?
That's also my recollection, if that's what the board wanted to do. You know, some miracle happened and 6 months from now, well 5 was complete. We have the money to pay the invoices.
On this slide, revenue versus 15 to 24, it starts out by saying approximately deficit 54.5, and then it says, this one.
He's ahead of us.
We'll wait on that.
So, I don't know, right now, we're $800,000 short, we're gonna try to plug in how we would have 900,000 for well 5.
Out of the 2.4 million sitting in the money market account.
Again, that number that you're reciting is if we approve all the CIP requests. You know, and we haven't even talked about that yet, so.
No.
Okay, the next slide, and I won't spend a lot of time on this because I guess we don't really need to get in the weeds, but this is something that we produce each month, showing you the balance in every HICID account, and you can see the ones in red is all the restricted funds that we have to maintain. And you can see there, under September 23, about 2/3 of the way down, there's a total, and it's almost 4.1 million. That's the total cash on hand. But a big chunk of that is earmarked and restricted.
And this is what I look at every month, simply because if you look at the unrestricted cash between the beginning of the year and now, we actually have $655,000 in our unrestricted cash, less than we had at the beginning, which of course is because we bought a bunch of fire trucks. But it gives us an idea whether the cash is going up or down.
Okay, next slide. So this is, once again, just a little bit of history on our revenue versus expenses going back to 2015. And you can see that expenses in the last 2 years and what I project for next year, expenses will exceed revenue. And so, I guess our job, as always, is to figure out creative ways to close that gap. To increase revenue, hold the line on expenses where we can. And, but I think it's kind of interesting to see how the district has tracked over the last 9 years or so. And then you can see that sentence at the bottom, as we discussed at the last meeting, we're currently looking at about a $200,000 deficit, meaning in order to balance the budget, we would have to kick in an extra roughly $200,000 out of that money market account for 2024 expenses. Now, it's a forecast. It's an estimate. We don't really know what actual expenses are going to be in 2024. There's just no way to know that, but, we've got a lot of data from the past many years, and so we can get pretty close on what expenses are going to be. Okay, next slide. Basically, the same chart here, but if in 2024, the board decides to add the 2.5% COLA that we discussed, that's $36,000, $220,000 for a road project, $39,000 for the water tower maintenance, which is something that we have to do. $48,000 for the walk-in freezer at the restaurant, and $15,000 for the marina electrical repairs. And the reason I've listed those particular items here, because I believe that all of those items are things that we really need to do. Then that increases that deficit to $508,000, and you can see that on the chart there. So this is just a hypothetical, just to give the board an idea of where we're at. Next slide. We added all of these other items. That's a lot. That's an $800,000 deficit. So, it's a lot of tough decisions. And I'm happy to answer any questions. There is on the last page of your handout, there is a list of the CIP items. And I know for those in the audience, that's hard to read, but I did provide a copy for each of the commissioners there. It's a long list. I put some items in red because, as I said, those are things that I think we really need to do. But it's, whatever, it's a pleasure of the board.
I had 2 calls of folks who couldn't come today, but they budgeting for the barn, the historic barn. Danny got a bid some months ago to barn roof at $86,000. We knew that wasn't possible, but he got first taken care of on that, on the flat roof part. But the Friends of the Barn has put in about $30,000 in materials, $30,000 free labor over the years. But we do not, that's an asset that, just like the pool or house, that we need to keep up, but we don't have any money. Got a workman coming over probably next week, and we're gonna take the gutters and cement board behind there because we're gonna pay for that. The other thing that's I'm concerned about is the way to pay for big ticket items like the 4 or 5 and others. We talked about the LCM which I think, Danny, was the term you used for the per capita income here, that our average person around the island, what they earn, what their wealth is, and whether grants are given to those with higher LCM. And it appears national grant is one that the city gave a couple of years ago for $600,000 melding our together to do state line drive. When we talked about the $750,000 will probably go up for the UV power plant, we talked about a low interest loan. So I don't think we better count at all on grants for any of these monies. I just don't. For a while before the city was formed, they said, well, the cities can't get it, and you can apply for them, but you're very low on. And the other thing that the person called me about to mention was, if we do any road work here, they would rather the 200,000, let's say we're gonna put into the budget for roads, asphalt or chip and seal, be done with the city to get a good job done. We had 2 contractors over the years, one from Cassville, passed away and out of business now. But it's difficult to get in. Well, first of all, we have to prepare the roads properly, and they weren't. Pleasant Ridge is one of them. And so we had, point is, I don't think that we should off on a lot of different tangents, not tangents, but putting money where we've got such big projects to come. And if it's a low-cost loan, then that's extending out just like our sewer line. Thank you.
Anything else on the district manager's report?
I don't believe there's anything else. I do want to point out one quick note. We still had some quotes coming in when this list that you're looking at here was compiled. And I got a couple of things over the weekend. Tyler sent me something on Friday, and then C.A. Johnson sent me some information as well about if we decided to finish out the kitchen area in the Sportsplex. I got that number over the weekend. So I have that information here in front of me. You also have this quote on the walk-in cooler. And let's see, this Tyler sent me. So I think it's all there. We have it all together and but it's.
We'll take that up in the budget discussion.
Gotcha.
Yeah, we'll take all those things into consideration when we get to the motion. Thank you.
Anything else? Okay, moving right along. No old business. New business. We will first consider action 2. Which is the question is consideration action to establish 2024 HISA rates. Do I have a motion to consider the question?
Each slide.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded to consider the question. District Manager Presley, will you please start the discussion on the 2024 session?
Kevin?
Yes, rather. So Sherry has put this chart here on the AOBs, and I think this is just kind of good for us to kind of keep an eye on as this discussion unfolds. The AOBs have not kept pace with the economy, with consumer price index and the cost of what it takes to operate the district. At some point, if the AOB does not increase, the services have to decrease. Something's got to give, and it's that way in every community. So, I'm not I'm not particularly advocating, but I want, the board to be aware of what the trajectory of expenses are and what AOBs have been for the last several years. And I hope that the research and what I put together for you is helpful to just kind of give this some perspective.
Can I start it off?
Yes, please.
Well, yes, it was helpful because our income needs to balance the outgo. And as much as Commissioner Brown's talking about the discussions he's had in the community, I sat with multiple people the other day who readily admit that Holiday Island 10, 15, 20 years ago, they were paying a whole lot more in city taxes, which for all intents and purposes, basically kind of what it turns out to be. And, our assessments, we'd love to keep them stable. But if we do, we're just gonna continue to degrade the infrastructure we have. And with degraded infrastructure, you're gonna have decreased property values. So I don't see, we're actually charging less now than we did in 2019. They were hoping to get some help with road projects from the city, but, that's on hold for now. I don't see how we can possibly accomplish what needs to be done with our current assessments.
Well, I'm not against an increase, I just want, the city was formed for those two reasons. Get turnaback money and life of Tyson. I would not be opposed to an increase, but one of the reasons I wanted a meeting with the city council and the board of commissioners over the years, one, it didn't turn out too well. But find out, are there any things that we could cooperate together on, like the payment for the deputies? The city now pays for the deputy sheriff. We have one, we're authorized, the city said we'll hire two, a police car. But they can't hire the other one because he's not available to hire. So there's maybe $100,000 that the city is taking that Heisen paid for years. We've had one or two deputies for as long as I've been here, 16 years. And maybe there's something else we can do. I think it's the fire department. And Danny has got the lawyers legal to do that we can get some of that would help to put money into the high set of other things that we have to do. But so, Susanna, not totally increase, but I just want to remember that every increase. I asked Wes Kelly if he would do this morning, and but the figures come out the same with Wes, and we're cutting off about 2 years. Instead of HICID being out of business on 2045, it would be 2043, which is about 20 years if we went with a $50 increase today or this year.
But at the same token, in 23 years, the need for money to run this community is still going to be there. And the city told us up front at the very beginning, they could never tax enough to support this community.
Right.
So, along the way.
So maybe next year it will increase, but everybody needs to know that it's going to short.
That's
short,
right.
short.
That's right. You're
And
exactly right.
I'm too old, I'll be out of here when it goes up.
That is part of the consideration, but the major consideration is paying for today and getting our budget balanced and increasing revenue. And the suggestions you made are good, but that's future things and that's small, really compared to, if we were to raise the, if we were to go to $50 across the board, we'd be adding in,
Almost $200,000.
$200,000, yeah. And that's that's adjusted for our 80% collection rate. We could add $200,000 in real income. That doesn't allow for the sewer and the other things that come out. But this is just general numbers of what an increase would look like.
It's only a plan,
Yes,
but anticipated usual and customary expenses are greater than your income, you gotta do something to adjust it. Last year, we adjusted golf fees to the amount we thought was possible to keep from running our golfers off. We adjusted rec center fees, we added $5 to the water rate because we knew we were not funding that appropriately. And still, those income increases have not been enough to sustain the increase. It's the cost of living, that's going up. It's not that we're doing any more, it's just costing more to do what we're doing.
We financed the inflation last year out of our budget.
Yes,
And so
yes.
this is our opportunity to bring our AOBs up to an appropriate market level, an appropriate income level.
One of the things we did this year too that was unusual, and looking at Chief Dave, he discovered a lot of shortcomings in the fire department, a lot of shortcomings of equipment, of personnel, and we've done, I think, a good job, Chief, of putting some money in that. It wasn't here a year ago. We didn't have that in the budget a year ago before you came. So I did that, and I appreciate the commission backing that, keeping that ISO where it is. Neglected it for several years, taking it down the road.
But it doesn't take signing too many checks for $500 tires to know that cost continues to be there.
So, I guess, do you feel that $50 is an appropriate increase? Do we want to make $50
is $4 a month extra on people, and it doesn't really even accomplish what we need to do.
Well, there is a $100 increase on the chart, but that seemed awfully, that was a big, heavy bunch.
That's $8 a month, you're right.
Yeah, I mean, go ahead, Commissioner Dyer. Read it.
Trying to be very respectful to half the population of Holiday Island that is as fortunate as we may be. That said, they have to live somewhere.
That's right.
And I can't imagine there's anywhere that provides services that they could live as inexpensively as they can here. I didn't use the word cheap, I said inexpensive. So I guess I would be supportive of a reasonable, my wife and I, $4 a month isn't gonna bother us when I order. But there are people in this community, people with elderly people on fixed incomes that every little bit hurts. So we need to be respectful and think about that. I would also, and I've talked to the district manager about this, my whole work life was in positions where every year we had to work on a budget and put together a proposed budget. When you build your own budget for your department, you put a little fluff in there for the unknown. Everybody does it. And sometimes governments are the worst. You put a little fluff in there because we don't know, as the district manager said earlier, we have no idea what 2024. Inflation, recession, whatever, it could be horrible. Fortunately, this board, or the board for next year, will have an opportunity to revisit the budget if something catastrophic happens. But I would like to throw out to the board that we ask our department heads, we challenge them, find 5% in your budget, in your fixed budget, not your CIP, in your fixed budget, that you can reduce your budget for the year. Let me show you an example. You put like $120,000 a year in the budget for a restaurant at the clubhouse. Yeah, we had that amount in the budget, but that restaurant showed a profit. It made $29,000 last year. They didn't dip into that, $125,000. So there is some fluff built into our budgets. And let's work hard, we've got a lot of big things going on right now, and everybody needs to sharpen their pencil and managing. That's my opinion.
Do you want to
This-
say?
Well, one of the things that bothered me about increasing the assessment is the vacant lots. The vacant lots that we have, there's over 3,000 vacant lots that are not being used. And anytime that you do an increase, those people living in wherever, Podunk, wherever, their costs are going up there as well. And it becomes a time whenever you say, do we really need that lot at Holiday Island? Let's just let it go back. Let's give up on this. And it's kind of like the radio ads that you hear over and over and over about timeshare. Say, did we do right investing in that lot at Holiday Island? We're going to be right here. Why do we need to go ahead and pay that? That's 3,000 lots that are paying more. Those vacant lots, 3,000 lots carry this. That's a lot of money. And so I think we need to take a long, hard look at what we go and how much we increase.
That's been my concern too, Larry, because actually the vacant lots bring in more income to Holiday Island than the people who reside here bring in.
That's right.
That actually the vacant lots carry the bulk of this budget. The homeowners don't put in enough. And that's the reason I hesitate to do an across-the-board increase, is that all of a sudden people are gonna say, just what Larry said, you know, I helped stuff the envelopes. There are people living in Germany and in California and New Jersey and places you wouldn't believe that own these lots. And you kind of wonder why. And if you raise those up, much, then they're just gonna turn back and we're gonna have more turn back lots. That is a problem.
And we don't have a method of getting rid of those lots at this point in time. I think there's all kinds of brain trusts going around, give them away or do this or do that. But the situation is that we're gonna have to build out Holiday Island. That's the only way that accomplished. But anyway, at the cost of building, a lot of people are saying, I can't afford to build now. It's too expensive. But I don't know. I don't have the crystal ball. Talk about fluff in the budget and this kind of stuff.
Well,
I had the engineer one time said something about there's a cushion. And the auditor said, oh, that's the Couchant theory. Yeah, it's the Couchant theory. But you have, the state law states that suburban improvement districts can forecast what their actual costs are gonna be and add 10% to it. That's what the old district law used to read. I don't know what it is today, but you could, that for unforeseen contingencies. So, but I'm like you, Bob. We need to take a long, hard look at what we can do, what absolutely is necessary, and take care of that. We gotta maintain. And I might.
Absolutely, and I'm very sympathetic to your comments about the vacant lots and the absentee owners. We're rolling the dice, you know, but we can't afford to subsidize them, like, you know, they've made an investment. And, you know, for anybody that doesn't understand, some of these people, I remember 2 years ago, almost 3, when I was made the chairman of this board, and one of the first things you're called upon as chair of the board is to put together a letter to send out to all the property owners, notifying them of the assessment of benefit for the year. Well, I got a lot of phone calls because my phone number was on that letter. And I'll never forget one gentleman that called me from someplace in Texas. And he said, "Sir, when is this going to end? Will that be paid off?" And I said, "Well, you know, it's my understanding it won't be paid off in the foreseeable future. You know, the requirements are ongoing." Well, I've been paying on this since 1984, and I've got 2 lots. And I said, "Well, are you ever gonna build on them or use them?" And he said, "Hell no." And so my next question was, well, this was, you know, a couple of years ago, we were kind of at the peak of real estate. And I said, "Where are those lots? This might really be a prime time to dispose of them, you know, if they're good building lots." He said, "Well, I don't know, I've never seen them." These are the kind of people we're talking about that,
They're probably the same people that are gonna say $50 isn't gonna kill me. I don't want a foreclosure on my credit report. I'm willing to continue to support. I made the decision to buy this and I have to live with the cost.
well, most of those people have investments, other investments, and they know that there are ongoing expenses.
Sure.
And that's the reason, and we found out with the golf fees that we raised a pretty significant amount and we didn't lose a lot of golfers. Our profitability is up. I think we could put a $50 increase across the board. If we get a lot of foreclosures, we get a lot of complaints, then the next year we don't have to, we can adjust it again, we can look at it again. But for right this minute, we're in a deficit on our budget, and that has to be addressed.
I'm sure going back to what Bob said, I agree with all of you, what you said here. That I noticed in the paper last week, the papers, was that Eureka Springs High School was the 10th best high school in Arkansas, 250. Now, why do I bring that up according to the test scores and so forth? Because we need young people to move here, and guess where they go to school? Eureka Springs High School. And young families, we got 137 kids that are here. We have 3 buses coming all over the area. So could some of those families buy a house? Some of the houses aren't selling too fast here. I don't know if you've noticed that. But we need to fill up more lots, we need to build homes. We're only allowed, according to the lawsuit, to spend $43,000, I think it was, recently, $43,000 on advertising. And High Pro has been really good, the group that tries to promote people to workshop, people to move here to hear more about Holiday Island. We've got to grow and not so I was glad to see that about Eureka, and we've got a good school. The other thing I'm wondering, Danny, is if there's anything on pick up a truck.
Let's address CIP when we get to the budget.
All right, you're right, I'm sorry.
We're talking ALB,
Yeah, got it, I'm sorry.
and
Bless you.
that's okay, it's easy to get wandering off, you know, one thing leads to another, but right now, let's,
If you went with the $50 increase across the board, that should bring in around $200,000.
correct.
So that would cover most of those expenses that Danny feels are really critical that we take care of when you consider we do have some extra money in the money market accounts that could pay for some of that. I went back and I looked for as long as we had, the balance sheet on the website, which was way back to like, 2010 or something. And 10 years ago, we never had more than $1 million in our money market account for a long time. So you could dip into the money market accounts, take out some of the things like the walk-in freezer and the marina electrical work. For next year, that could be done. I'm gonna mix things up, but I propose that we put the road projects on hold until we
Yeah, but
resolve.
we're back on CIP, let's.
Look, if we were to tie that $50 increase, which would expect to see a couple $100,000 from that, and then we were to tie that with a 5% reduction in operating expenses from the department heads, that's gonna bring in another $250,000. So now we've got $450,000 that we satisfy our budget and have a little CIP.
We're back to the budget, and Danny will address that part.
And it kind of all
We'll
ties
talk
together.
about that when we get.
What can kind of depends on what you have.
Right, and so that's why we need to, can we reach a consensus for $50 across the board is appropriate? Guess we can't reach a consensus.
Well, we can, I mean, I'd like for it to even be more, but I'll go with 50.
You would want to do,
I would do more, but you know.
the motion is on the floor, and I'm asking what that number should be. And, again, going up $100 would give us almost $400,000 in income. But that's, again, a pretty big number.
That's
If
out of sight.
Yeah, if you split the difference,
That's definitely out of sight.
and did 75, then we'd be at about 300,000.
But there you are, you're not gonna be able to cover all the stuff that needs to be done. But I mean, 50 is certainly better than leaving it as is not tenable.
I would be willing to support a $50 increase if we can tie it to a little belt tightening within ISAC.
We will, lost my notes. So our discussion would be to have $50. Does anyone in the audience wish to rise and speak in opposition or in favor to the proposal? Ms. Gray?
Yeah, I have a concern.
That, Mike, name, address?
We don't know who you are.
Linda Graves, 29 Table Rock Drive. I have a concern that you can't do a $50 across the board legally. I think you have to apply a percentage to every class of property, the equal percentage, not a dollar amount.
Okay, thank you. Would you look into that for us?
I sure would, yes.
I agree with Linda. Number one, it's based, we talk about AOBs. AOBs are not any different than what the county says you've got an appraised value for your home or your property. It is a percentage. That's where
Okay,
the value of everything does make a difference.
okay. So,
But we say a $50 increase for R1 improved
That's how much it
and a similar percentage for all the other classifications.
Yeah.
It would be, I was just doing some math here on the calculator, it's a lot easier that way.
yeah,
At 8%, if you did an 8% increase on an improved property, which is currently $780, that's $62.40. $62.40, and a 7%. This would be $54.60.
Okay, that's a better way to look at it. You like Lucky 7?
You can look back at previous years and see how it was figured by the accounting people.
Yeah, we'll figure it out. Yeah, thank you for your input, yeah, we'll figure it out. And so, obviously, we can make that $63. $7%, is that what it is?
7%.
Just please make it divisible by 3.
And I guess it doesn't have to be an even number for the billing, but it's one, did they hear you say that? What, say it again?
I said, just please make it divisible by 3 because of the coupon on the billing. We end up with 2-cent credits or.
Okay, you and Danny can work that out. But yes, that makes sense to me, to start with the 7%. And you can run the chart and adjust the numbers, and so we're averaging 7%. Or,
7% of each of the current assessments.
more, right, yeah. 33, 66, 79, whatever you wanna do.
So that would be in the motion, that we could do plus or minus 50 cents or something to make it
Just
To
a
get
matter
it
of-
right, yeah.
for the ladies in the office who do the billing to make it, okay.
Sure.
We can restate the motion.
I think that, when you talk about ad valorem taxes and county taxes, are you saying that this would be a way to repeat what you just said earlier about the county tax versus an assessment? It'll be,
Put your mic on. Thank you.
In the beginning, it's an arbitrary figure, but the Suburban Improvement District had the authority to issue $7,280,000 in general obligation bonds. Well, that was the fee that was set. That $7,280,000 was distributed as AOB, what the benefits were for every lot. But at that point in time, every lot paid the same amount. It didn't make any difference if you had a house on it or you didn't have a house on it. They paid the same amount. That was the base figure that was used to assess the benefits. And commercial lots had more benefits than a residential lot, blah, blah, blah. But that's how it was done, and it was basically an ad valorem basis of assessed valuation. So anyway,
Bonds are paid off.
yeah.
So
So do you want to restate the motion?
what, the motion is to approve an increase in the 2024 HISD assessments at the rate of approximately 7% for all property holders, with minor adjustments by the clerical staff, the office staff, for ease of billing purposes. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Well, let's do a show of hands or something,
Oh, okay, if you could do it.
because I completely missed it.
Okay, starting over. The motion that was on the floor is to approve an increase in the 2024 assessments. And we have discussed and approved that rate at approximately 7%, give or take a few percentage points for ease of counting. So all those in favor of 7% approximate, plus accounting difference, this is all we're talking about. All those in favor say aye. Opposed? The ayes have it, and we will increase the assessment of benefits by 7%.
And I will
With
run those numbers.
minor adjustments in
Rounding.
rounding and 33 cents.
I would like
Whatever it
to,
takes to keep Miss Carrie and the rest of the ladies happy.
You know, I would like to say also that 7% is going to be within what the price increase of everything that we, other than our groceries about 80%, I think, but anyway, it falls within the inflation factor.
I think that's.
And so I think that's justified
I think
because
it's a good number.
our cost is gonna go at least 7% more. And, our wages, we did a 8% there back at the beginning of this year, but anyway, I think that's justified.
I
And
agree.
assessments haven't been changing for a year.
Right, right. So we have been falling behind, the inflation rate. Let's take a very brief, break and, be back here in just very quickly so that we can move on and get the, rest of the budget taken care of.